have joined us in the public who've joined us in the public gallery, and currently we are unable to webcast because there are technical difficulties. Apparently there was some maintenance in this room over the weekend, and as a consequence we will be able to hear those who join us remotely, but they cannot hear nor see us. So we'll open the meeting with an acknowledgement of country. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We must be respectful of Indigenous concerns about token gestures, empty rhetoric, and performative aspects of acknowledgements, given Australia has failed to address unfinished business, implement the Uluru Statement from the Hague, or contemplate treaties or reparations. Our local government area did vote 62% in support of enshrining a First Nations voice into the Constitution. So I will give tonight's acknowledgement of country, knowing that the majority of voters in our LGA voted yes. On behalf of all present and those watching on webcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands in which we meet, and to pay our respect to the ancestors and spirits, past and present.
Thank you. We have had one application to attend tonight's council meeting remotely from Councillor Keane. Many of you can see her there on the screen. She can't see nor hear us, but I think nevertheless we will put that application. Councillor Beregi, move it, seconded by Councillor Antonini. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously, and subject to technical capacity, we will endeavour to let her in, but acknowledging that may not be possible. Any disclosures of interest for any items on the agenda? No. I will read this in case we are suddenly able to miraculously overcome technology. This meeting is being recorded, that is true, and may be publicly available on Council's website, no doubt at a later date. Those present should therefore refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image, and in this circumstance, your voice from being webcast. Councillors, council staffs, and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during meetings of the council. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, call, or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. That brings us to confirmation of the minutes. Is there a mover? Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Beregi. Is there any discussion? I put the minutes. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously.
Madam Mayor, sorry. Councillor King would like a leave of absence. Says
Oh,
she can't hear us.
certainly. You move the leave of absence?
Can I move
Yes.
leave of absence,
And
please?
seconded by Councillor Beregi. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. And if someone could advise Councillor Keane that she has been granted a leave of absence. And apologies for the technical difficulties that caused that to happen. Councillor Carr, could you please turn off your microphone? Thank you. That brings us, we have two items for which there are registered speakers this evening. 10.4, the administration of the special rates levied for Crow's Nest and Yucca Bay business areas, and 10.8, the bike share parking trial. Councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we open the public forum for items 10.4 and 10.8 so that we can hear from the speakers before the items are debated.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Holding. All those in favour? And that is carried. Before we move to those two brought forward items, there is a mayoral minute, and it relates to, it was circulated to every council in the country from the Australian Local Government Association of Australia, and it's about election 2025, the federal election priorities. The ALGA, the Australian Local Government Association, has developed a framework and resources for national advocacy campaign for local government in the lead up to the federal election. It is entitled Put Our Communities First, and it seeks to secure additional federal funding to support every council in Australia to play a bigger role delivering local solutions to national priorities. I don't intend to read the whole of the now a minute, but you will see that ALGA have identified 5 priority advocacy areas, and they relate to infrastructure and funding of infrastructure. They relate to the continued federal funding for roads to recovery and community infrastructure programs. They also relate to emergency, to funding emergency and mitigation and climate mitigation. So this minute recommends that council support the national federal election funding priorities identified by ALGA, that we participate in the Put Our Communities First campaign, and that we write to the local federal members. We still currently have 2, but as of the election there'll only be 1, and to all of the election candidates, and also to the President of ALGA, expressing support for ALGA's federal election funding priorities. I think this is most important, not least because as those who attended last year's ALGA National General Assembly, one of the biggest issues that is facing local government, no matter how big, no matter how small, whether metropolitan, rural or regional across the country, is the fact that 24% of services are delivered by local government, and yet under 4% of federal of revenue, of tax revenue, both state and federal, comes to local government. This council, like every other council in New South Wales and around the country, has supported the advocacy for 1% of Commonwealth revenue to go towards federal assistance grants, and certainly this is an extension of that. So I'd urge you to support the motion. Are there any speakers? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question actually on this. Is this motion simply asking council staff to write to the various ministers and incumbent candidates, or does it require more council resources than that?
Well, it would probably be a letter from me to the candidates and to the local member and to the President of ALGA, and it would be using some of the Put Our Communities First campaign material on council social media.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. That brings us to the first of the brought forward items, which is item 10.4. There is one registered speaker, Mr. Rick Doran, and if you would come forward, Mr. Doran, to address council.
Thank you.
If you speak into the microphone and give your name. and who you
Is it
represent.
possible to sit down?
No, this is how we do it.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to address council once again. Quite a pleasure to come down here so regularly. My name is Rick Doran. I represent the Neutral Bay Chamber of Commerce. I wish to speak to item 10.4, read the funding of the Chamber's Secretariat, Concept Events Management, or CEM. Our objectives tonight are to, one, reinstate the funding, some $18,000, two, to pay unpaid back funding from the period of July to October last year to CEM, three, to broaden it a little bit more and ask council to provide assistance to the chamber for funding if perchance CEM don't wish to do it. We don't really know how to approach these organisations. Our chamber is a mixture of florists and chemists and chicken shop operators and retirees, so we need secretarial assistance so that we represent the numerous commercial and retail landlords who pay a Main Street levy to council, which totals some $300,000 each year. So they expect representation where their monies are spent. I often get the developers and the big owners coming to me and saying, well, what are we spending all this money for? We have to justify our involvement with council and that the projects are appropriate. So that's been a very good relationship with the Secretariat for the last 10 years, and prior to that, a very good relationship with council for some 20 odd years. It's a perfect example of council working with the community. How long have I got, Madam Mayor?
You have 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Okay, so we also like to reinstate 3 or 4 regular meetings which were dropped last year, so that we can help do the combined expenditure with council officers. Council officers are doing a terrific job. So that's the objective. Confusion seems to reign, councillors, about the payments to CEM. Council stopped paying those back in June of last year. 11th of October, we were told that it was going to council by a project officer and that it would probably pass through. 2 days later, we were told that it didn't go to council. On 15th of November, our treasurer supplied detailed information to a council officer, a project officer, and followed that up for 5 weeks without an answer. And then on the 24th of December, the day before Christmas, we got an email from council, or CEM did, received an email from Teresa Cole from council requesting a more detailed breakdown of the services that CEM provided to Neutral Bay Chamber of Commerce the day before Christmas. It's a strange time to be doing business. So in summary, council appeared to make a change in July 24, that is stopped funding CEM.
That is your 3 minutes if you just finish your...
Okay, I've just got one more paragraph to go. Okay, so that change meant that there was no funding until the 24th of December, which means we didn't know as a chamber until mid-January this year, 2 months ago. CEM has continued to provide services to Neutral Bay Chamber of Commerce in good faith with expectation of being paid, which seems to be confirmed by the project officer as recently as October 24. Thank you. What we want is to sort it out amicably, have our funding reconstituted.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Thank you for your participation. Oh, thank you, Councillor Carr.
I don't know how to address the...
You ask a question
Mr.
directly, succinctly,
Okay.
and on the issue.
Mr. Doran, have you had discussions with council staff regarding the application you made and the reasons for the refusal?
We had discussions. We have a very diligent treasurer. We had discussions with council on the 11th of October about payment. That was, according to the project officer, was going to council on the 28th of October, and that council officer didn't anticipate any issues. Then we found on the 31st of October it didn't go to council. Back on the 24th of December, then there was a further request for detailed information of CEM. Too late for anyone in the year to do anything. We all know if you want to bury something, you send it through the day before Christmas.
Sorry, you have to keep your remarks that they're not defamatory.
I apologise, Madam Mayor, I retract those comments.
Impugning motives to council staff.
I retract those comments, Madam Mayor. So there has been numerous discussions. We've had this ongoing relationship for 10 years. It seems that...
Thank you. You've answered the question in relation to those things. So thank you very much for
Thank
your
you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Berrigan,
I move the recommendation.
is there a seconder? Councillor Spencer-Lee. Do you wish to speak to it? I have a question of the CEO. We heard from Mr. Doran that council has stopped, that council has, the words were rescinded the funding. My understanding is that hasn't happened, but that there's an issue with the information that hasn't been provided akin to what process did. Is that right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as council will appreciate, council has been undertaking a fairly significant review of its financials and also the processes that go into funding mechanisms. That includes grants to community groups and includes this levy. In relation to this levy, Mr. Doran is correct. There was a request put into staff and project team did what they would normally do, which is suggest that yes, it will be a report to council and then it's likely it will go through council. Given the situation that we have at North Sydney, it is very important that we scrutinise all payments that are paid out to community groups. My request, and unfortunately I do have to work over Christmas, my request was to ascertain what benefit and or what activities were funded from the $18,000 that was being requested. Crow's Nest Main Street obviously have the Crow's Nest Festival. They also participate in other promotional activities. My request to Neutral Bay was to ask for the $18,000, which is $1,500 per month or $350 a week, as to what campaigns, what promotional activities was undertaken through this funding. Now, obviously, administration, if you are administering a group, there is a cost to that, but I would suggest that $350 per week is a little high if there are no promotional activities or social media and the like. So what we're looking for, we did get a response to our initial inquiry to say, we said what was this funding to be used for. It was to fund administration of meetings, promotional activities, social media, membership management. The follow-up questions in relation to please explain a little bit more detail as to social media activity, campaigns and the likes was not responded to. And so therefore we're now 3 months from the 24th of December and we haven't received a response to the inquiries. And so our recommendation is that we move ahead with Crow's Nest, and if the information is forthcoming, we may present a different recommendation to council. But once again, it's important that this funding is acquitted, and it's also important to note that because this is generated through a special levy, it won't be spent on anything else. It will go into the reserve for Neutral Bay to be spent on the main street, whether that be in infrastructure or assistance at the time.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Why is she? Thank you, Councillor Spencer.
Sure. Madam Mayor, just a question through you to the CEO. Could we just clarify, did we stop paying the fee in June without notifying them and then follow it up at the end of the year? Or was there some information to them to allow them to plan that the fees were under review or not being paid?
Through council's policy is that on a yearly basis that it needs to be approved by council before payment. So it wasn't a decision, it was simply that it hadn't been put to council. In relation to the payments to Neutral Bay, it became apparent that through the financial statements that were provided that this payment isn't actually paid directly to the Neutral Bay Chamber of Commerce. It's actually paid on invoice to this the event management company. From what I understand, but I'm happy to explore with the finance team. I'm not aware of any outstanding invoices, but certainly we can follow up on that.
Thank you. Are there any other, Councillor Carr, do you wish to speak to the item?
Well, a further question to the CEO actually. So has council staff really sat down with the Chamber of Commerce and went through the exact requirements that are needed for them to complete the requirements so they can get the funding? And I think Mr. Doran said that the Secretariat hasn't been paid for a few months because they were waiting on the grant.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the policy of council is that the $18,000 isn't approved until it's approved by council in any given year. In relation to, as I said before, the services that are provided or have been, or the payment that is made to an event management company, not the Neutral Bay Chamber of Commerce. They have been sent a very detailed email with questions that are very specific, and we're more than happy to sit down with the Secretariat or the Neutral Bay Chamber of Commerce to understand the answers to those questions, but they're pretty straightforward.
Which we're happy to do.
Sorry,
Happy to sit down.
just draw you to order, thank you. Are there any other questions or speakers? Do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll put the item, all those in favour, and those against, and that is carried unanimously. That brings us to the next brought forward item. There are two registered speakers. The first is here, Tony de Godric. If you would please come forward and address council. Thank you. Can you give your name?
Yes, well, Tony Godwin, and good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors.
After your time begins now.
Must be going already. Right, okay. Well, look, I just want to let you know about my request that I put into council on this matter. I'm going to quote from it. I said, I wish to find out how council can permit a commercial operator such as Lime Bikes to allow its bikes to be left abandoned, dumped, on footpaths for days and even weeks. For example, on the Green Park footpath and at Green Park shops, grass verges, and even in bus shelters. For example, at the Falls bus shelter on the corner of Grafton and Falls Streets, there were 3 bikes left for a week. And by last Saturday, this has grown to 4 bikes. And down at Folly Point, there had been a bike left there for 2 weeks. All left on council land with apparent impunity. That is, without any penalties or action being taken against the commercial operator. Interestingly, none of these bikes had safety helmets locked into their baskets, and there may be a reason for that. I don't know what that is. By the way, I nearly tripped over 2 bikes parked right out the front of the council chambers on the way in here tonight, so they're everywhere. The bikes are often left blocking footpaths and laying on their side, creating a trip hazard. Yet a council which prides itself in streetscape beautification appears impotent to do anything about this littering of the local landscape on land which it owns. The last time I left something on a grass verge was for 3 hours when I was trying to sell my car, and I was very quickly fined by a very officious council ranger. On the other hand, Lime Bikes appear to operate with complete impunity. These lime-coloured bikes are proliferating like rabbits on heat. They are being abandoned in significant numbers all around our beautiful neighbourhood. It's very much like exactly what happened with Uber Rideshare. A big multinational simply moves into the market, takes over and worries about the consequences of its actions at a later date. So why is council saying this is, quote, a proposed dedicated parking trial, unquote, when Lime Bikes have already made their bikes freely available since November last year, and they're parked everywhere? Why didn't council act back then to stop the rollout of bikes by a commercial operator until the proposal was properly considered and approved? What do you think would happen if you tried to set up a small hot dog stand on your grass verge in front of your home? It wouldn't last too long. Anyway, when I rang council's complaints handling line, I was simply given an 1800 number on which to call Lime Bikes to request removal of abandoned bikes near my home. However, that number simply takes you to a useless telephone call centre in India. I say useless because it took me 20 minutes on the phone to explain where the various bikes had been abandoned. They then wanted me to go outside and get all the serial numbers on those bikes so that they could locate them, despite the fact that these bikes, as I understand it, all have tracking devices installed. It took at least a week for some of the bikes to finally be removed from the area where I live, but not all have yet been removed and new ones have replaced them. Lime Bikes also claimed that there are so-called designated locations for their bikes to be returned to. But from what is plain for all and sundry to see is that these bikes are being abandoned by riders anywhere in the street that they please.
It's more than
Because-
your 3 minutes, but I'll allow you to finish your.
Thank you. I haven't got long to go now, thank you. So they're being abandoned anywhere in the street that they please because at the moment there are no designated pick-up or return locations. Anyway, why should residents have to be burdened with the work of council and be fobbed off to deal directly with Lion bikes themselves? I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for many residents who I've spoken to. This so-called trial is a blight on the local landscape and is creating serious trip hazards and obstacles for pedestrians. There will be legal action when people fall over these. Let me now turn to just some of the proposals in the agenda paper, because I think it's important, if you've read the agenda paper, to ask some questions. Paragraph 2.2 in the council agenda paper is headed.
If you could just stop for a minute, I'm going to have to, we're so far outside of
Sorry.
our code of meeting practice, I'm just going to move extension of time,
Thank you,
suspension of time, standing orders, seconded by councillor Berrigan.
thank you.
We'll give you a further, until you finish.
I haven't
All
got
those
long.
in favour,
Thank you.
thank you, they have an extension.
So I just want to turn now to some of the proposals in the agenda paper, which I assume you've all read and which is before council today. Now, paragraph 2.2 in the council agenda paper is headed stakeholder engagement. But the only stakeholder engagement is with the commercial bike share providers. Not a single word about engaging with the community or affected residents. In paragraph 2.3 of the agenda paper, which is headed measuring success, the council is going to rely on data collected by, guess who? Line Proprietary Limited, to determine at the end of a taxing 12-month trial whether the trial has been a success. Now, it's not hard to guess what that non-independent data is likely to show. And astoundingly, in paragraph 1.1 of the agenda paper, it's proposed to use some no stopping zones to house these commercially operated bikes. Hello, no stopping zones are there for a reason, and they're meant to be kept clear of vehicles at all times for safety and traffic flow reasons. I just don't understand what the authors of this paper were thinking when they suggested that idea. Anyway, I don't believe I am exaggerating when I say this bike problem is the second biggest council fiasco after the North Sydney swimming pool redevelopment. So I'm today calling on councillors to immediately halt this absurd trial before it even gets started. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your
There should be some
participation.
questions, but thank you.
Thank you. We now have a second resident, Amanda Weston, who is coming in online. I hope someone texted her to say that when she's admitted, we can hear her, she can't see or hear us, so she will speak for 3 minutes. We can't even semaphore. Ms. Weston, can you hear us? No. So someone was telling her she can begin. Maybe you need to give her another call.
Hi, I believe it's my turn to speak. I can't hear anything, I can't see anything, so I'm just going off the text messages I'm receiving. Obviously, I don't know what has been said prior to this. From the information I was able to find, I agree with most of the things that have been put forward for the bike parking areas. There are just a couple of things that I think should potentially be done a little bit differently. A little bit of background on me. From a professional standpoint, this is the kind of thing that I do. I'm a professional strategic planner, so I will be the person who comes together in a room with 20 different viewpoints and find the fair and equitable result for government and business and residents and visitors to the area, parkers, riders, all of those people. So I had actually put together a strategy for council on this and then found out that you were already doing this. So I I won't go over the things that I agree with, but I have a couple of questions and a couple of things I think that should be done differently from the information I've been able to find. So in relation to those 50 locations that council is putting forward, I'd like to see some community consultation, or at least being able to feed into that, especially during the 12-month trial period. I couldn't find anything on residential locations. I truly believe that these should not be in small residential streets. So keeping them on Blues Point Road, keeping them on Broden Street, keeping them out of our actual, living areas where we have very limited parking, very narrow footpaths, that kind of thing. I think first and foremost, if that's where we're going, great, keep them on the main roads. If not, then yes, no parking should be removed, and these should be adjacent, I think, to no stopping areas rather than in no stopping areas where that's safe and doesn't involve any grass. I absolutely think that during the test phase, this should be done within the apps. They can mark out very clearly for riders where they can and cannot park bikes. So there is absolutely no reason that we need painted markings on the ground that will never be removed if that's not a great location. I think residents and, I think everybody should be able to feed back into those locations during the trial period. And I do not agree that residents, ratepayers should be paying for this in any way whatsoever. All costs associated with marking out areas or designated spaces, that should be borne by those companies. As a resident and a ratepayer, I don't get free access to public spaces, and I don't understand why we keep funding businesses to have access to these spaces. So I don't know if you can still hear me, but I genuinely believe these costs, all costs, should be borne by these companies. It should be unbranded if they are going to be signposted, and it should be something that can be easily removed. Thanks.
Yeah, hopefully in the recording you'll be able to hear me say thank you very much. Unfortunately, we were unable to ask questions of Ms. Reston. Perhaps if a staff member could text and thank her for her participation.
Happy for anybody to get in contact with me afterwards and chat through anything.
Thank you. That brings us to the item. Is there a mover? Councillor Verity moved the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Do you wish to speak?
I was at my right.
Councillor Welsh?
Yes. Okay, I am pleased about the proposed dedicated parking trial for bike share in the North Sydney local government area. And hopefully it will end up alleviating some of the issues that were highlighted by Mr. de Goverick. As many of you know, bike share services expanded into North Sydney in November 2024, offering residents and visitors an additional sustainable transport option. However, while this expansion has been welcomed by many, it has also highlighted key challenges, including footpath obstructions and inefficient bike distribution. I just want to say I agree with a lot of what Ms. Rustin said, and I do also want to highlight that we do allow a lot of free parking in our community, and I don't think that the community quite equates the free parking with the bikes, as they seem to tolerate the parking for the cars and really get upset about the parking for the bikes. Okay, in response to these concerns, Transport for New South Wales has approached North Sydney Council to implement a 12-month trial of dedicated parking for bike share. This trial aims to improve the management of bike share services by designated specific parking areas, reducing clutter, and enhancing the overall experience for pedestrians and cyclists alike. The trial will include geofencing technology around designated locations, ensuring bikes are parked correctly, and line marking to visually identify these areas. To ensure accessibility and minimal disruption, North Sydney Council is proposing approximately 50 locations across Crow's Nest, St. Leonard's, the North Sydney CBD, and Milson Point. These locations have been carefully selected, prioritizing footpaths where there is adequate pedestrian space, as well as no stopping zones, so that no existing car spaces are lost. The initiative represents a proactive step towards better integrating bike share into our urban landscape, making our streets more organized, accessible, and pedestrian-friendly. By trialing this approach, Council can access its effectiveness in improving bike share parking while maintaining public amenity and safety. And I encourage my fellow councillors and the community to support this trial as the council works towards smarter, more sustainable transport solutions for North Sydney. I support the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this initiative is really good, and it's something that we really need in our area. A couple of comments on it is that I think the trial should be extended in other areas. We should look at extending it. I mean, Neutral Bay is an absolute mess, so it would be nice if that was included. And the other thing is, I agree with Ms. Reston that the costs for implementing this trial should really be borne by Lime Bikes and other share bike organisations, not using ratepayers' money to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Before I give you your right to reply. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, to you or to the CEO. We were looking to re-establish the MOU with Lime Bikes. Do you have an update of where that might be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll pass that question to the Director of Open Space and Infrastructure.
Through you, Mayor Baker. Discussions are still ongoing with Lime Bikes in relation to the MOU.
And just a follow-up question, if I can. Would you be able to discuss with them about providing some funding to just put it on the table as part of the discussions?
Certainly. It's just that obviously there's more than Lime Bikes that we're using this part.
I was going to do that. Thank you.
There any other questions? Before you have your right of reply, I'd like to quickly ask you as a mover and seconder to take on two additional points. The first is that there be a progress report within 6 months' time. And the second be that Council write to the e-bike providers who are part of the trial, seeking funding for the trial or contribution to funding for the trial. If you would be prepared to take those two things on.
Happy to.
The reason that I'm adding those things is in response to matters raised by both Mr. de Goldbrick and Ms. Reston. I just wanted to quickly speak to some of the things that Mr. de Goldbrick raised. Many residents have been as frustrated with the proliferation of, at the moment it's only Lime Bikes in North Sydney, but with the shared e-bikes. The fact is that the council has almost no control over it. The expansion into the North Sydney local government area was under state government legislation, and in terms of compliance, the first port of call for compliance and enforcement action is to the e-bike providers, and it does mean that residents are having to be engaging with those commercial entities first. What this council has been doing, in fact, it's top of mind. At the last council meeting, we resolved a number of things. The first was to continue our lobbying of the state government to amend the Roads Act and other legislation in order to permit councils to have more control over both the location and enforcement and compliance around these bike share scheme and e-scooter schemes. The second is that we are pursuing an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with the current provider in North Sydney, Lime Bikes, who during the last term of council engaged with us with an exceptional Memorandum of Understanding that geo-fenced the location of some of the bikes and also required much more regular maintenance and collection by Lime. They walked away from that because the state government changed the legislation and there was no requirement for them to engage with us in that way. But they have now come back to us because the tide has turned, I think. We are also not only doing that, but we're actively being part of this trial with Transport for New South Wales. There are a number of other councils, including the City of Sydney, I think Randwick and Waverley, who are involved in this same type of trial. And hopefully this will be one that results in effectively docking spaces for these shared bikes. And as Ms. Reston said, on main roads rather than on narrow residential streets. So for all those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion. Councillor Berricky, you're right at the right.
Thank you, Mayor, I think you've covered it.
Oh, in which case I put the item, all those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. So that takes us back to the agenda. Is there Councillor Berricky?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a procedural motion to consider some items on Globo. I don't have any listed councillors who wish to speak to any items, so if I go through each of the items and just let me know if you would like it excluded from the on Globo. 9.1, the Access and Inclusion Committee minutes. 10.1, matters outstanding to 24 February 2025. 10.2, February 2025 month-end financial report. 10.3, investment loans borrowing report as at 28 February 2025. 10.5, development assessment performance ministerial letter. 10.6, New South Wales Government's Crow's Nest transport orientated development rezoning finalised.
10.6 out, Councillor Santos.
Sorry, Councillor Sanders, 10.6.
And Councillor Carr, which did you wish to speak to? Perhaps the simplest one is for you to identify which matters left on the agenda you wish to speak to.
Well, I have item, the Access and Inclusion Committee, item 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, and 10.8.
So let's do it the other way around. So you have
That just leaves 10
10.1,
points.
and 10.6 has been brought forward. 10.7, 10.9 and 10.10 are the items that.
10.7, 10.9, and
You want to speak to those two?
No, there's
no,
one she
no.
doesn't want to.
no,
Sorry.
I don't want to.
So
then I'm-
sorry, I'm going to have to. So Councillor Carr,
Yes.
you wish to speak to items 10.2, 10.3, 10.5,
10.4.
10.4 is already dealt
yes.
with.
Sorry.
Thank you.
10.5.
10 point and 10.6 is Councillor Santa wishes to speak to 10.7,
No.
10.9, 10.10.
Yeah.
So Councillor Berricky, the items by exception therefore are 10.1, 10.7, 10.9 and 10.10.
I have to do those.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Holden. I'll put those items by exception, all those in favour, and that is carried. For those listening at home, that means the recommendations in those reports have been adopted by council. That brings us back to 10.2. Is there a mover for, 9.1, the Access and Inclusion Committee minutes. Councillor Berricky?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move it, and given that we're speaking to it, I'd just like to add a number 2. The council thank and recognise the contribution of Naomi Deck as a foundation member of the Access and Inclusion Committee. And that Council Wright, formally from the council.
Already have.
Oh, you've done, it, okay. And I'd just like to recognise her, she's, I'll speak to the motion in a minute.
Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Antonini. Councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. The Access and Inclusion Committee minutes are there. It was a very robust discussion. One of our members has moved to Parramatta, Naomi Deck. Naomi recently addressed the citizenship ceremony as well. Naomi has been an incredibly special and engaged member of the Access and Inclusion Committee, a very dynamic member who made enormous contributions. I thanked her on behalf of council at the committee meeting, but I'd like it recognised in the minutes since we're debating the item as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carr, did you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, what I wanted to, say was that on page 11, regarding the design of the diagram, I would suggest a clarification to the minutes that the safety concerns and the response received from Transport New South Wales, which were discussed at the meeting we had with the design company, and then where for the visually impaired individuals, I think a number of residents are concerned that the safety concerns with the bikeground, the cars and the pedestrians and the bikes coming together at the end of the bikeground were not taken on board by Transport New South Wales, whereas this particular item was something that they were interested in. So a clarification in minutes would be very good. Thank you.
With respect, the minutes reflect the meeting, and it's not to expand beyond what was discussed. And certainly others concerns about pedestrian and other safety wasn't discussed. It was, I was there as an observer, and so I'm not prepared to take to allow that to be taken on because it's not reflective of what actually happened. The minutes are accurate. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Verity, do you wish to write a reply?
Thank you, Mayor.
So I put the item, all those in favour and those against. Councillor Carr against, that's carried. That brings us to next item 10.2, the February 2025 month-end financial report. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Verity, seconded by Councillor Santa. Any discussion? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, I have some questions actually to the general manager. Is it normal that to levy the rates early when you look at the financials, all the rates have been collected? And are there any rates and annual charges that are due in March to June?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it is the legislation that we levy all rates at the start of the financial year, and then residents are able to pay either upfront at that point in time or by quarterly instalments, and each quarterly instalment is submitted on that basis. I understand the original assessment goes out in August, and I believe the last assessment for the year would go out in March and be collected April, May.
And the second question was, are there any rates or annual charges due between March and June?
So the fourth quarterly instalment will be due between March and June, but it's just for everyone's understanding of financials and the way that we provide the financial statements. Accrual-based accounting means that we account for those rates when we raise them. And so, so what you see in the income is not necessarily the cash flow, it's the accrual that's raised at the start of the year.
Thank you. Second question is, what is supplementary rates processing?
Through you, Madam Mayor, throughout the year, as people put applications in for things like whether they be developments or when developments are completed or there is subdivision, there will be a review of rates. For example, the development here at Aqualand, it was at one point in time a block of land with one assessment, and then when that development was complete, an occupation certificate was granted, then there was a supplementary adjustment made for the strata basis for the rating.
And the last question, if adjustments to property value positively impact rates, would these continue into this quarter?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to be clear, adjustments to property values do not change rates, change the total rating income. So when you have a Valuer General send out an updated land value to yourself and to residents, If your land value goes up by more than the average land value in a particular area, your rates will go up. If your land value still goes up, but goes up less than average, then you will get a reduction in your rates. That process happens as part of the value, the regular valuation cycle. In regards to the supplementary valuations when properties change, yes, that happens throughout the year, really dependent upon when those developments come online. Our future projections do provide some increase in forecast rates in relation to supplementaries.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Do you wish to speak to the item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried unanimously. That brings us to item 10.3, investment and borrowings report. Is there a mover? Sorry, I'm on the wrong agenda. I'm on last week's. That is still the investment
Yes.
loan and borrowings report. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Verity, seconded by Councillor Sancha. Any discussion? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Questions. The investment advisor fees are 9,000 year to date. That seems to be quite high. What is the projection for fees by the end of the financial year?
Through Madam Mayor, if it's $9,000 through to February, if I divide that by, say, 8 months, it's approximately 1,125 per month. So for the remaining 4 months, it's 4,500 to the end of the year.
What is the expected decline to the cash balance by the end of the financial year?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is reported on a quarterly basis in the quarterly budget review. I don't have that in front of me tonight.
Are there any other questions or speakers?
One more question, sorry. Based on the long-term financial plan for 24-25, the cash and investment balance was projected to be 90 million. The report shows that the cash and investments currently stands at 145 million. So that's a difference of about 55 million. So can this amount of money be used to improve council's financial performance?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no. What you will see in the quarterly budget review and certainly in the monthly financial report is an analysis in relation to the actual spend of council funds versus budget, and what you will see in regards to that is the percentage of capital expenditure that is spent year to date is quite low as compared to the full year budget. Some of our capital works projects are seasonal. That means that they may not happen until later in the financial year. You also have the North Sydney Olympic Pool project, which, depending on the date for practical completion, may push past the end of the financial year. From my understanding of the last quarterly budget review, the capital works team said that they were on track to deliver their capital projects, with the disclaimer that the North Sydney Olympic Pool is a watch or a monitor in progress, and so if there is any additional cash or higher than forecast cash at the end of the financial year, part could be through the savings programs that we're trying, the efficiencies, but those are adjusted for in the quarterly reviews. So those quarterly reviews should show where we think we'll have positive variations. And then in relation to capital projects, if they aren't completed at the end of the year, it's likely that contracts have been let for those projects, and it will be a timing difference as opposed to an opportunity for savings. As you'll appreciate, councillors, in our quarterly budget reviews, we're also identifying capital projects that should be deferred to assist our liquidity program, but I would encourage all councillors to look at the quarterly budget review for forecasts in relation to actual budget and or liquidity.
Thank you. Could you turn off your microphone, please? Thank you. Is there any discussion? I'll put the item, all those in favour, and that is carried unanimously. That brings us to 10.5, development assessment performance ministerial letter. Moved by Councillor Berrigan, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Do you wish to speak?
I'll reserve my right to reply, thank you, Mayor.
Any speakers? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given the importance of responding to DAs in a timely manner, I would suggest that Council considers way to increase resources in this area to enable the progress. I do have a couple of questions. With respect to the local planning panel, the DAs are taking too long for determination. Can we speed up the process for that? And if we do not have control over the panel, why are the DA determination times included in the league table?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the question as to why they're included in our league table is one for the Minister. In relation to resources, we are looking at additional resources. It's quite a challenging area. There's a skill shortage in relation to development assessment planners. So even if we were more financially sound, we would still struggle to get the resources that we may need to make a swift change. So we're certainly increasing, and I've been working with the planning team to be able to increase resources where we can in that team, but that challenge is not going to go away.
Thank you. And I noted the list of DAs for Coles, number 258/2023. I thought that DA was refused, and Coles has Coles submitted a new DA? Why is it showing up as unfinished in the list?
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I pass that question to the Manager of Development Assessment?
To you, Madam Mayor. The Coles DA is one of our oldest DAs. It is actually managed by the Sydney North Planning Panel rather than us in terms of its progression. It is due to be reported at the beginning of May, so it's still active. There were amended plans submitted towards the end of last year, which were advertised. We have somewhere near 900 submissions in total for that application.
Thank you. And the DAs with Woolworths, there's DA 162/2024 and 281/2024.
Councillor Carr, these are all Sydney North Planning Panel DAs that you're referencing. If you read the report and the report from the last council meeting, those are timings that the council has no control over. They're with the with the regional planning panel, and you would have noticed that it was 260 days on average for DAs before the regional panels, and 406 or 8 odd days for those that are on appeal with the Land Environment Court. They're not within our control, and they're part of that 15% that are included by the Minister in the league table, but the council, any council has no control over.
Okay, thank you.
That's all. Thank you. Councillor Berry, did you wish to say?
I will just briefly, Mayor, there's not a lot of debate really, I don't think tonight, because we addressed this in the last council meeting when we had the report come to us. We subsequently received the Minister's letter. But I will agree with the comments that you just made, which I was going to raise, is that many of these timeframes are not in our control. And you will recall that we made an addition to the recommendation, the resolution, which was that the panel meetings for the local planning panel actually be held in public, and not just the public addresses, but the actual deliberations and the voting, so that we actually have transparency. It's astonishing that here we are, transparent, everybody gets to see how we vote in a timely fashion. The panel meets, it takes submissions from objectors and submitters and applicants, and then goes into closed shop. We don't hear the discussion, we don't know the discussion, we don't know the debate about the voting, what was going on, and then we're advised 2 days after the decisions have been made. So whilst, as Councillor Welsh, I recall, at the last meeting said, North Sydney, we must and have to do better with what we can control, but much of what we can't control actually stretches out our numbers, and I think that is very clearly articulated in the report, and the Mayor again raised it, so thank you.
Is there any other speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried unanimously. That brings us to 10.6. Is there a mover? Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Walsh. Councillor Santa, you wish to speak to the item?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion that stands as there. I applaud, first of all, I'd like to applaud the rights of the paper. I've had experience over a number of years in preparing and submitting policy briefing papers at both federal and state government levels. And this is one of the most professional papers that I've ever read, a policy paper. Nothing better illustrates that local government is not and can't be just about roads, rates and rubbish, as some outside commentators have recently been suggesting. We are an essential force for good, comprehensive governance and can bring hands-on, down-to-earth experience to help ensure that fundamentally important issues like the TOD should not be left solely to organisations which don't have day-to-day involvement with their communities like local government does. I agree with the need for all three levels of government to be involved in addressing the current desperate housing shortage, but it is unfortunate that the state government has apparently not adopted our recommendations sent to it after the first draft TOD released for comment, in particular on the proportion of developments to be allotted to affordable housing, the protection of year-round sunlight to, in particular, Ernest Place, Willoughby Road, Mitchell Street, Oxley Street, Hume Street Park, and low-density residential areas outside the area boundary. Two, as the report succinctly and fittingly says, quote, preserve their vibrancy, amenity and character. I'm also worried about the apparent preoccupation in the TOD with residential built form rather than also with commercial, and a lack of allowance for overall infrastructure, especially public recreational space to cater for the great increase in residential numbers, many of whom will be families with young children. Why also has there been little apparent consideration given to adequate tower separation, the reduction from the original draft in setback controls and transition interfaces? And apparently a missing green links component, the latter which could seriously affect our LGA's already declining tree canopy thanks to the Western Harbour Tunnel and Warringah Freeway upgrade projects. I'm concerned that in the great debate about a lack of affordable housing in Sydney in general, and in particular in North Sydney, there's been no inclusion and development of a comprehensive and meaningful regional decentralisation policy for New South Wales, accompanied by the revitalisation of the regional public transport network, i.e. trains, to encourage growth in cities other than Sydney. Why does Sydney have to house, employ and educate this growing population? The arguments presented in this report, backed up by the long experience our staff and some councillors have had in dealing with this issue, demonstrate to me the importance of ensuring that local government retains its necessary involvement in the establishment and in implementation of policy in this area, perhaps has its role restored. Its experience in and understanding of the issues involved in this complex policy area is surely second to none, particularly if compared to that of the state government public servants who are currently charged with handling the TOD. I strongly support the recommendations contained in this paper and the motion based on them, which, if adopted by the state government, wouldn't compromise in any way the objectives of the TOD, while adding back into the scheme the humane and environmentally conscious elements it currently lacks. I support this motion. I hope that this motion, I support the motion, and I hope that it will be adopted unanimously by Council.
Thank you, Councillor And Councillor Walsh?
I too support ensuring that our planning and development policies prioritize livability, sustainability, and community well-being. As we continue to shape the future of our community, it is essential that we strike a balance between growth and the preservation of our local character, public spaces, and quality of life. I support the recommendation to provide greater solar access, improve landscape character, human scale enhanced walkability and rideability in our urban environment. This means incorporating adequate tower separation distances, setbacks, and appropriate lot sizes in our planning framework. These measures are not just technical planning requirements, they are critical in maintaining the health and vibrancy of our streetscapes, ensuring that residents have access to light, green spaces, and pedestrian cycling friendly environments. Furthermore, we must ensure that growth is accompanied by the necessary infrastructure to support both current and future residents. I agree that Council calls on the state government to provide clear details regarding the housing and productivity contribution for the Crow's Nest Accelerated Todd Precinct. The funds generated from this contribution must be allocated transparently and effectively to deliver essential community infrastructure, including open spaces, road upgrades, separated cycle paths, community facilities, and improvements to critical services. Crow's Nest is a thriving, connected community, and any future development must enhance its character, not undermine it. We must demand that development contributions are invested where they are needed most, to benefit our residents, improve our public amenities, and create a livable, sustainable neighborhood for generations to come. I support the recommendation.
Thank you. If there are any other speakers, before I give a right of reply to them, Councillor Holden.
Yeah, just briefly, thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to really agree with Councillor Santa and Welsh. Thank you. I think this report by the council staff is excellent. It's long. It's definitely worth anyone who lives in these areas. Certainly, that's Crow's Nest. It's well worth them. Looking at the report, there's some really good recommendations and considerations in there to do with solar, separation, setbacks, walkability, livability. It's very nuanced, it's very intelligent, it's very informed, and it's really contrasts the one-size-fits-all policy that the state government have delivered, like a sort of golden goose to developers in that area. So I think it's encouraging that there are some rays of light in this report. There are some things that we can work with, and we can only hope that the state government listen to the increasing clamour of our voices, because as quote Game of Thrones, winter is coming.
Thank you. Before I give the right of reply, Councillor Santa, if there is any, because we're in all furious agreement. The fact is the brunt of the accelerated Todd precinct is being borne by the North Sydney local government area. And I just want to reiterate the praise for Council strategic planning staff. We are very, very lucky at this council to have the calibre of expertise and professionalism with the strategic planning staff that we have. Of the other Todd precinct councils have not been able to produce the sorts of submissions or the sort of analysis that we are enjoying tonight. I've been contacted by a number of residents who have been equally praising of council staff and appreciative of this, as Councillor Holding said, dense and detailed analysis. It is a very important tool for our community and for the council as it continues to lobby the state government. It is a pretty parlous state of state government planning that the accelerated Todd precinct process was better than the one-size-fit-all of the mid-rise reforms that will still apply, notwithstanding these the accelerated Todd on the slopes of Wollstonecraft and throughout parts of Crow's Nest. It's a double whammy. And it is a parlous state because it was a rushed and ultimately failed process when our council staff are able to pick up a litany of what we'll call misalignments between building heights and FSR controls. That if we are to avoid a windswept, soulless canyon along the Pacific Highway of 24-storey plus towers without any separation, without any light or relief, it is vital that we continue to lobby the Minister and the Department of Planning to amend the TOD provisions to address these. I'm going to be blunt and say, we'll be polite and say mistakes rather than on purpose. We need them to address, as Councillor Santa said, the canopy. We need them to address affordable housing. It's absolutely appalling that where the levels of affordable housing that are to be required in return for the biggest single generation of uplift and yield to the private sector in any one corridor of North Sydney, without anything really brought in change. The changes that are proposed towards the proposed Lithgow Street Park are sensible and actually expand the amount of open space that would be possible in the precinct. But what we do know is the infrastructure is just not there and not sufficiently funded. A new school was urgently needed when the 2036 plan was but a twinkle in the previous state government's eye. We needed it in 2016. We could see that the density would require another high school. We knew it in 2020 when they made the 2036 plan, and in fact it was included as part of the infrastructure contribution that was subsequently repealed by this state government. And at 2025 we are living in a crisis where students in Waverton and Cammeray and North Sydney are unable to go to Cammeraygal High because it is at capacity, and they're being diverted to Mossman, which is almost at capacity, and Hunters Hill. If you're going to have this level of new housing and new density, you must, as a state government, plan for and provide the essential community infrastructure to serve that new population. And that's why, as Councillor Walsh said, a contribution that applies just to the TOD precinct, that is administered by the councils in it, that is collected in the precinct and spent in the precinct. I mean, imagine that, the novelty of the old planning, the contribution requirement of a nexus between the collection and the application of the funds. It is vital that we get that. And so councillors, on Friday we reinvigorated the joint working group on this TOD precinct with Lane Cove and Willoughby councils. They are supportive of the recommendations in this report, and we will be seeking a joint meeting with the Minister as well as doing our own lobbying. So for all those reasons, I thank the staff for their exceptional report, and we just have to keep, this is a war of attrition, and we're in for the next battle. Councillor Santa, in that case, I'll put the item. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. That brings us to the last item on the agenda, the notice in motion. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I've sent in a revised motion. I'd also like to thank those councillors for contacting me in relation to the notice of motion. And have you got that one? No. Oh, I sent it in. It's fine. I'm happy it's only brief. That a councillor briefing be held addressing the role of construction, traffic management plans and traffic management plans, and council's role in managing development sites and construction traffic.
Is there a second?
Is there a second for that?
Second by Councillor Santa.
I'll just speak briefly to it. A couple of councillors contacted me and said, before we ask council to prepare a report, I'd really like to understand the whole notion of construction management plans, traffic management plans, council's role in both approving them and then enforcing them. And so I thought maybe before we ask council staff to put a report together, that a briefing be held so that they are aware of the issues, and then if a report is necessary, it can come back to council.
Is there any other discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. That brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you all for your participation. The next meeting